Hello. Welcome to the show. Appreciate you guys checking in. I really appreciate it. Hopefully, we will not have the fiery episode that we had last time. And but it was definitely a great for entertainment, but that's not me. But hopefully it will be just as entertaining on a positive note. Oh, hello to my special guest. I've been trying to get you for a while. I've been watching your Instagram. I really appreciate what you're saying and what you're doing. I was watching some before we booted up here. So welcome to my special guest, Miss Taylor Chandler. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. I'm excited for this conversation, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let me greet some people here. Hello to Michael. Michael's a new sub. He watched. He was one of them to watch the episode. Like, listen, I gotta sub to this dude. His patience was on fleek. Miss Plum, greetings to you. Rhonda, hello. Rhonda is my pit bull there. She says she's always telling people to hit that like button. Please make sure you hit the like button. Garrett, what is up? Garrett, what is going on? L, please tell me the last live as well planned and thought out joke. Listen, I wish I could tell you that, brother. I wish I could tell you that, man. But it was ooh. Out of sight, out of mind. Hello from North Carolina. Thank you so much for checking it out. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, this will definitely be a much better vibe than last time. Yeah, absolutely. So we started to have some good conversations. This is why sometimes I don't like calling people early because you start having these good conversations off. I'm like, man, we got to get this on tape here. So Miss Chandler asked me, how long have I had this podcast? So I started to go down this road here. So I retired from law enforcement in 2019, right before everything hit the fan there, right? So, next year we get the pandemic and then we get George Floyd. And I'm like, man, I would have been out here and all this craziness, right? So, I retired from law enforcement in 2019. I started a podcast called Captain Hunter's Podcast. The audio is still up. I'm sure you can go over to wherever you listen to audio podcasts at. And there I was talking about trying to bridge the divide between the police and community. Really similar vein here. And then after that, the pandemic hits, we get shut down. I'm like, you know what? It was hard to get guests and stuff. So I'm like, okay. So that's when I went back to school, completed a doctorate, and then I changed it from Captain Hunter's podcast to Dr. L's podcast. So that was I've completed my doctorate in 2023. So somewhere around that time, probably October, November, so something like that. So and I wanted to talk about going back to school as an older adult, and then completing my doctorate, what that was about. Nobody was listening to that. I was like getting like 10 views. and then well, maybe more than that, 20, 50, something like that. And then I start talking about self-improvement, and that's when it kind of kicked off. And then the ladies, y'all know how y'all do, y'all hijack people and stuff. Well, what's your opinion about this and that and this and that and relationships type of stuff. And I think one of the biggest ones that I did, one of the biggest episodes that really got brought attention was, what I would tell my younger self and why. And that was one video. And another one was about sort of older man get married or something like that. And so those two videos kind of brought us to where we are today. So, but I'm just a guy who enjoys having conversations. I like to talk to all different ranges of people. And I just want to have a good time. And I'm one of those who wants to fix the community. I, like you, have seen a lot of problems within our community, and I really wanted to help out with that, particularly from my time in law enforcement, right? For me, it wasn't just about locking people up and whatever, but I really like these people are really struggling. Like, why? I can remember a lot of times, like I used to get a lot of flack about this, because in the city that I worked in, all major cities or whatever, we would have a problem with street walking prostitutes, right? And so like we would like kind of harass them a little bit, but I was a little bit more empathetic. Like how'd you get out here? Why are you out here like this, right? And they would tell me it was they had a boyfriend who got them hooked, or they had been touched as a little kid, and it just kind of messed them all up. So I really just always been an empathetic type of person.
Mhm.
I grew up in church and all that kind of stuff. So, but that um so yeah, so that's just how I got into this vein here. So,
Okay.
but they don't want to hear about me. They want to hear about you. How did you get into this line of work here?
Yeah, so I actually went undergrad was in business, and then I got in trouble with law enforcement my junior year. I got caught with a fake ID, and I had my whole after post grad plan like it was set, and then because of that um, fake ID situation, I had to switch gears, and I added psychology as a minor my senior year in college, and then I got an internship at Virginia Tech. That's where I went to undergrad. Virginia Tech's Marriage and Family Therapy Center. That's where their PhD students do their hours to get their PhDs. So I did an internship there, and I just got really motivating feedback from the director there about me being a therapist. And I had never thought I would be a therapist. That definitely wasn't my plan. But she really just could see things in me that I really wasn't even paying attention to because that wasn't what I was going for. But that really inspired me to pursue therapy. And so then I moved to Atlanta when I got my master's, and then I stayed there after that. I got fully licensed in 2018, and I began my practice immediately. Like day that I could day that I got fully licensed, I started my practice essentially, and that's where it all started. I started my podcast, Boundaries and Grace, during COVID, so that was I think like late 2019. That's when I started the Instagram account that people find me at now, which is my name. I am Taylor Chandler. So that's when I started my Instagram, the podcast, and it's been going ever since.
Mm. Very nice, very nice. Thank you for that. Let me try to clean this up here for Miss DeLauren Davis here. What you mean by we would harass them? So
Mhm.
people, they don't want that type of things in their neighborhood, so they would call us and say, there's a couple of ladies walking down our street, so we would pull up, and these guys would we would jump out and get their IDs and this, that, and the other, and then um, try to get their customers essentially, so we would kind of sometimes park around a corner, turn our lights out, see who the customers were, the Johns were, and try to get them that way. That's what I meant by harass them. But again, I was always it was always, for me, it was always like I felt bad for them. Some of them had real habits, obviously drug habits, and others had kids to feed, and it was to me, it was heartbreaking to see them out there like that. So, and other guys just did not have that level of empathy. So, welcome, Kelvin Davis, welcome. So, I totally forgot, we were communicating, right? And so I'm starting to go through my old stuff. So I came across this video that I did of you, of a review. So I'll put it on here. This one, the first videos that I reviewed. You're welcome, DeLorean. People hear kind of different stuff, so I wanted to be very clear about what I meant by that. So I want to put this on the screen here. So this is one of the first videos that I saw of you, and I reached out to you. I'm like, oh, I gotta have this lady on the show here. So so we'll put this on. Let me So this is I'm talking about Passport Bros Explained, finding a better relationships overseas. And so this is the video that we had on there. What's up with this, and what can I do to improve? That's just the way that I think. Everybody obviously doesn't think that way. So I got a couple warm-up videos here, and this is a sister here that I just saw today a little while ago, and wanted to kind of highlight her. And if anybody has the full video, please make sure that you send it to me so I can take a look at it. So here we go. First video here. Warm-up videos until we get to the main attraction here.
women have the support of a massive group that participates in ratchet behavior and ratchet thinking. Now, white, Asian, and Hispanic, they got ratchet people, but you had to go away from the group to do that. They don't house you. They don't nurture that. The Black community, the massive group, accepts it and nurtures it. It's totally backwards. Rather than sending the ratchets away, the massive Black groups bring the ratchets. There's a safe space for them. When they're confronted, you look like the minority because you are the minority that confronts that culture, and they're the majority. This is the only group, this is the culture where the ratchets has the power socially, the nerds, the high value minded people. When I'm talking about high values, I'm talking about pro-social values, generosity, respect, honor, faithfulness, kindness. I'm talking about community. High values your way of being. The people like us, we in the Black community are the rejects. In other groups, the ratchets are the rejects. In other groups, that's for entertainment for them. They're going home doing the right thing. The smart people are elevated because they know you're the key to our progress. In our group, the smart ones are rejected and they think you're trying to, oppress them. It's interesting. You're so backwards. You think we're trying to oppress you. We're trying to free you. Black women.
So I thought that was very well said, but I wanted to give you a little bit of time to elaborate on that, if you would like.
Yeah, I think that culturally we pedestalize, it seems like exactly the wrong things that I think we hear the word now, we hear a lot like degeneracy, like things that I don't particularly like that word, but I agree. I mean, I use maybe language like low grade behavior, low value behavior, things like that, and we pedestalize it, and it's all over it's not just in the media. And so I think I hear a lot of arguments like that's just media, it's just entertainment, but no, we see it in real life numbers in terms of like single motherhood, divorces. We see it in delinquencies, addiction. We see it in so many areas, and it's not. And there are many factors that are at play as to why those numbers are the way that they are. And still, there is an acceptance of that type of behavior and a normalization of that behavior that I find really disturbing, and that we don't see at this level with any other group. And that seems clear to me. And so I was highlighting and you can hear, it's like there's a lot of, I mean, disturbed is the word that just always comes to mind. Like when I hear myself and see myself in that clip, I'm like, I'm just so disturbed about it, because we have accepted it, made it normal, housed it literally it's in the house, which we got to talk about what's going on in the house. And it's just set us on a track as a race group that has snowballed just out of control at this point.
I do want to get to the topic of the show, but this is definitely a great opening segue here. Is, what is, when I talk to a lot of Black women, they don't seem to understand how we got here. You seem to be able to articulate that. Tell us from your perspective how we got here, how we celebrate, in particular for Black women, celebrating this type of ratchet behavior.
Yeah, I really believe it's in the house. I really believe it starts in the house. And so when the family broke apart and there were decisions that were made that broke, it didn't just break apart, like it didn't just happen, right? Like when families broke apart, it was the decline was evident, and it was swift. I mean, a swift and fast decline in every single major area of every life area. So all of these social areas, financially, economically, things went down. Mentally, emotionally, psychologically, things went down, meaning like we're having more mental and emotional health disorders, especially in children, which is really disturbing and telling, because the children which are now the adults that are like running rampant and causing a lot of chaos. The children were greatly affected, and now we're about 2 generations out from when this really started to snowball. But I really believe that it started in the house, single motherhood.
Yeah. Yeah. How much pushback do you get when you talk like this? What are your comment section? Do you get emails? How much pushback do you
You
get?
know, people actually think I get way more pushback than I do. I actually get more pushback from men, way more
Really?
pushback from men than women. Yes, like by far. And I wish I could
Oh,
say differently. Like I wish I could like tell everybody, you're right. Like I get all these emails and DMs from women that are telling me like I'm a pick me. No, like I probably hadn't called a pick me directly like twice, honestly. And I have a lot of videos out there. I mean, it really doesn't happen. I think I also communicate things in a way that's pretty like grounded and clear. And I try not to be inflammatory because I'm really not attacking people. I'm really just kind of stating like I think like facts and reality. But I really don't get pushback from women. I get a lot of pushback. No, I don't get a lot of pushback, period. But when I do, it's majority men. I'd say if I had to like give it a percentage, it'd be like 8 or 9 out of 10. Like if I get pushback, it's from men.
and what are they saying? What are these guys saying?
Those are the ones that there's some that just don't want to hear anything from a woman and just think that like in some way I don't know, distorting the message it's kind of weird to me. I'm getting things just about in general, not wanting to hear things about where this all came from a woman. Hearing that's pretty much it. It's pretty much like just you don't want to hear from a woman. That's about as detailed as it gets.
That's pretty that's pretty stupid there, I gotta say.
It
Y'all
is.
hit the like button. Y'all hit the like button. We do have I see your question. I wanted to get I see your question, Garrett. I want to get to marriage a little bit later because we started to have a great conversation before, so I want to save that for a little bit later. So tune in. I want to finish off the conversation today about marriage and what it's going to take. Um, yeah, that's really disappointing by the men who are saying that.
It is. It is. But fortunately, though, I will say that because of the audience that I've built, there will be men that I don't even really I don't respond to that stuff, and there really will be men who do actually reply and comment, and they actually do check the men about it, which I appreciate because I think that that's really important that that men actually do speak up when they see like unreasonable arguments and just kind of like these unintelligent deflections away from the truth. So I appreciate when men do speak up about it.
Do you think there are enough women as yourself speaking up
Not at
to the?
all.
Yeah, yeah. I made a video. I haven't dropped it yet. It's called "Y'all Like Being Ratchet." I haven't dropped it yet. I'm going to drop it soon. Let me put up another video here that was good. We're going to get into a little bit more of behavior and all that.
Mm.
Let's see. Share screen. Watch history. Why does it do that? Okay, here we go.
Our ratchets are accepted. I believe we need to change that. The other groups, their best bet, any kind of ratchet behavior, any kind of dysfunctional, destructive behavior, their best bet is to correct themselves because there are true consequences if they don't from their group. We don't have that. The other groups, they got to correct themselves to stay in the group. Black women can refuse to correct themselves and they still get to stay in the group. This is basic social pressure. There's social pressure in other groups to be different and to be better. It comes from first within the family, literally in the house, and then from the local and society. There is social pressure to correct themselves. Black people don't have social pressure to correct. There's not enough pressure to stay aligned in the right direction. So it just falls apart. If you go out of order, you keep going. There aren't enough guardrails and we don't have enough accountability. People standing up and saying, no, No, we don't do that. No, that's not acceptable. No, we don't live like that. No, it's not cute. No, it's not funny. No, we don't do it. And if you're going to do it, you don't get to do it in the house. If you can't align with these pro-social values, you can't be in the community because you are inherently destructive to the community. How can we keep you in here when you tear things down? I'm not for inclusivity of everything. Respect is a different thing, but I don't include everything. I got to exclude in my life. I got to exclude certain behaviors. I got to exclude certain mindsets. I got to exclude certain values. I got to exclude certain thought patterns, feeling patterns, because the way that you do is destructive. And I think as a Black community, we need to be more clear on where you draw the line. You got to include everything. You got to include everybody. I can't, I won't. We have been way too inclusive in the Black community, so flexible, so damn free that it's fallen apart. And now we have chaos. White, Asian, and Hispanic group, they're ratchet.
Break that down for us. How do we get these guardrails? How do we exclude people and still move up? And
it has to be, it's social. It's going to be social. So we have to disengage from the people like in the media and social media, TV shows, in real life, we have to disengage from people who participate in that kind of behavior, who even endorse that kind of behavior, who are definitely getting paid, they're being funded to do this kind of behavior. We have to disengage from that and not stop supporting that. We have to understand that also supporting it isn't just isn't buying a t-shirt, it's watching. Now your attention is support now. So it's viewership. It's in what you watch. So all of that stuff matters. And I think we need to disengage from all of that. And I think we have to actively stand against it and speak up. Those of us that are more aligned with these pro-social values and are actually for, like you said earlier, bridging the gap between men and women, so many of us don't speak up because it's not in I think of it as almost not in that type of person's nature. Usually there's kind of that group of people is kind of out of the way, minding their own business, and that's why they're a productive member of society. But also because we're not speaking up, they're the loudest voices and the voices we hear the most. And now it looks like the mass of people, when I don't necessarily think it's actually the majority, but what we see, it absolutely looks like the majority of Black people are behaving in a certain way or believing certain things or acting in these low grade, low value, participating in these low grade, low value behaviors because we're not saying things. And this group of people, the more the bridge, the people that are trying to build a bridge, or at least just live a healthy, constructive life, really aren't trying to be on Front Street, and so it's gotten out of control. I think we have to actually, like I said in that video, start to draw harder lines and actually speak up about it, and then actively disengage from the people that aren't aligned with that.
I've advocated for, and I like what you talk about when you talk about guardrails and stuff, right? So I've advocated for our professional organizations, and I would include churches, any type of Black associations, Black Lawyers Association. I don't even know if that exists. Black psychologists, all these different organizations, that they should have a say in this and saying, okay, here's the standard. And I'm going to tell you from my law enforcement experience, my audience has heard me say this before. I would see lawyers, principals, black female lawyers and principals. And I'm not trying to pick on them. There's a lot of dudes doing crazy stuff too, but they are, running around with Pookies and Ray Rays and, getting pregnant and engaged in this very behavior. And that's where the pejorative Keisha comes along at, right? Because they have you heard that term, Keisha?
Yes.
Yeah. So, these educated ladies who grew up in quote unquote hood environments made it out because of their education, but still engage in this very same type of toxic behavior. And I guess we can kind of move into what the show is about. How do we really root this problem out from a cultural from a mass event down to the macro to down to the micro, right? How do we really root this problem out of our community?
I think we have to manage our expectations. Like, there are some people that are gonna like people who have chosen to live that way. You know, they're old enough. If people that have chosen to live that way, live that life, I don't think that it. For me, my let's say philosophy is like, I don't try to save those types of people. Like, I don't try to save someone who is actively choosing and then defending those kinds of decisions. So I think that we have actually, those of us that do have some consciousness about these issues, I think we have spent in general way too much time on those people who get to choose like how they're living their life, and it's easy to kind of use them as case studies and call them out and all of that, but that's what they're choosing to do, and many of them aren't willing to change. They don't want to they don't want it to be different for whatever reason. And I think we spend way too much time on them and not enough time on the people who actually want better. And it's almost like when there's a family and let's say there's two siblings, one's a problematic child, oppositional, let's say, and then we have another child who is getting, you know, they're on honor roll every quarter. And who typically gets like the attention in the house? You know, like, it's not that, okay, it's not that the parents aren't proud of honor roll kid, but it seems like the problematic kid needs so much more attention. It seems like the problematic kid really, and as children, yeah, it makes sense. They need support, right? And they need to be guided and led. But then after we're adults, and then, you know, you're past 30, now you're in your 40s and in your 50s, and you're choosing that life, and we're still focusing on the problem children, but now they're problematic adults. And I think we spent way too much time on those people. And I think we have to remove our attention from them and really focus on the ones who want something different, but might not be speaking up and might not be raising their hand. They're quiet, heads down, trying to live their life, trying to get the advice and wisdom where they can, but really aren't given the same amount of attention that, like, we're not giving support to the people who want it as we are giving we're giving more judgment to the people who don't want it and giving them attention. And we should be, I think, shifting that to support of the people who do want it. So the people who are these like kind of case studies in negative ways, I think we can use them as examples, but we really have to put our resources in people who actually want change.
Yeah, I struggle with that. I agree. I hear what you're saying, but I just struggle with it. You know, I know that this guy is probably a pariah, but I think that his analysis was correct. You know, I'm talking about Umar Johnson there. You heard of Umar?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, what he wanted to do, and I guess other people are doing it, other schools are doing it, is take the kids out of these environments and put them into, at least that's what he talked about. What he wanted to do is something different. So let me just say, what he talked about doing was taking the kids, the boys in particular, out of these environments, detoxing them from the TVs and from sugars and all this, and then giving them a solid foundation, and that would help to you know, create different types of children later on, or different types of adults. And sometimes, you know, it's sad to say, but a lot of times it is too late for a lot of these people who are adults, because they have established their ways. They like it, they enjoy it. It's the way they live, it's the way they move, the way they talk. It's been successful to some extent for them, and they just enjoy it. But as you've mentioned at the very outset of this, it is not benefiting us as a mass culture, and it's embarrassing,
Yes.
in all that. So yeah, it's difficult to really kind of, you know, formulate a plan to deal with this. I talked about well, let me talk about it now. The role of church, and not that I'm religious, but you know, when you talk about guide rails and guardrails, I really think that was a big problem, that when we lost, uh, when the church lost its respect, and when the men stopped going to church. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's huge, particularly, of course, in the Black community. I mean, the church has been a staple, or should say at this point had been, because it's definitely different now. I mean, the numbers are declining. It's clear that People are separating, men are separating from the church. There is some research about men, especially conservative men, who are actually becoming more engaged and more religious, which is different. Religious and spirituality are different. People go to the religion conversation is really big, right? Someone can be engaged in religion, but not necessarily engaged in their spirituality or relationship with God. So we are seeing like some increase in numbers with especially conservative men being more becoming more religious, which does not speak necessarily to their spirituality. So it's a nuanced conversation. But I do think, to get back to the premise of that question, I do think that without the church being like a nucleus, as it had been for so long, especially in the Black community, that has caused chaos. It's contributed to the disorder. So the church, I mean, is like basically like a home away from home that holds people accountable. Not just because of like something like church leadership, good church leadership, but also because of God leadership, like the idea of submission to God and a higher law to abide by than the law of the land, and even a law that's higher than your pastor, right? So there's this, without that nucleus in place, just like an atom that has a nucleus holding all of the things together, things fall apart. And so I think that's a really, really, really big deal. I did a video a while ago, probably like 2 years ago, about pandering pastors. The video was called 5 People Lying to Women. And one of the people I highlighted was pastors. And I connected that to a big reason why men don't go to church, because men tend to like the truth more, like in like a plain way. And I think pastors getting away from the word of God has turned men away from church, because if I can't trust you to deliver literally the one thing you're supposed to do, deliver the word of God, the one thing you're supposed to do, like do that, like, I guess maybe we could argue, also, reconcile people to God and salvation, all of that stuff. But you can understand my point. You're supposed to deliver the word of God. And because you've diluted it so much, and it's become like a motivational speech every week, rather than a sermon that convicts you, it's a sermon that inspires you, and nothing's wrong with you, and everybody's hating on you, and it's not you. It's all of these messages that I hear woven into these, like, especially mainstream pastors, mainstream churches, that I think have really, really, really turned men off of church, because it's not rooted in the word, which would be the truth. And so I could go on and on. I have a lot of thoughts about religion and church and how that's playing into this whole thing, but I'll pause there. I think that's a big reason why men have left the church, which I think is also reflective of why men have left homes and left women. So I see that through line, like in men falling away from these places where we can't be in truth, we can't be in reality. We have to deny, we have to minimize, and we have to pretend. And I think that especially, I'll say masculine men, I think that's safe to say here, right? I think especially.
Oh, it's definitely safe to say, yeah.
I think especially masculine men, like it's like it's like the antithesis to that kind of man. Like it's an antagonist to that kind of man. Like I don't think a man like that can't be in that kind of environment. So I think it's only natural that they would fall away from it.
Listen, I don't want to stop you. So whatever you got to say, I mean, give us the falling away from the church, elaborate about that and how that relates to the men and women falling away. And I definitely want to dig into the men and women falling away. I mean, give us your thoughts about all
yeah, I think that church became, of course, we live in a capitalist society, and church is an industry in America. And so not every church, right? Like, I go to church, and the church that I go to, I think, is like it's such a pure church, like a really, really just well done church, and very, really small. And probably it's a good thing. I've been to the big churches too. I think I really like this church. because they're really aligned like with actually like the word of God and all that. So, and there are other churches, of course, like that. But when we're talking about mainstream, which reflects a majority, right? And it reflects society and culture. So I'll stay on that, and I won't go to the outliers and the exceptions. I want to talk about like the main like bulk of what's going on, and how that main bulk has turned church into industry. And when you do that, the people, the congregation, are no longer the sheep that you shepherd, but they're dollar signs. And so now I have incentive as the pastor, and then other church leadership it's a system. So now I have incentive as church leadership to keep these dollar signs in the pews because we're a business that needs money. Not to mention all the tax. I mean, there's so many tax incentives. So it's a system, and so whenever money, I hope I don't get too far off track. So bring me back, Dr. L, if I do, okay? Because
You're good. You're good.
Whenever we have a distorted relationship with money, when money is used for things that for like nefarious things, like when the heart, I'll say if the heart posture is off, if it's out of greed or selfishness, when it's not like this pure thing, right? Because I do think that like tithing, for example, can be is a good thing, but then when people are being exploited to tithe, right, or being like, there's some kind of some kind of like pressure or fear has to be instilled in people to tithe. Well, now the activity of tithing now becomes a very different activity based on the posture of the person tithing. So when money is used in, I'm going to use the word nefarious ways, like when I have to pander to people so that I get more money, and essentially what I'm saying, then now I compromise the truth because I need you to come back. And so we have a lot of stuff about money. We've got pastors with gigantic egos. I mean, like we have like mainstream pastors, which are like celebrities. And I'm not saying they shouldn't get attention, but I am saying that can really create some ego issues. I think we see that very clearly playing out on stage right now with the church. And so now I want an audience, and I'll compromise the truth to get an audience. I'll compromise the truth to get your money. And so when we have compromised truth, I mean, the integrity of the whole structure is now at risk. It's falling apart. And so women don't react to that the same way as men. It's almost like in general, y'all, really in general, because of course this isn't all women. But in general, and it's very, very clear, women tend to flock to that, where men tend to be repulsed and disgusted by that. And so it's like two like almost polar opposite reactions to the compromise of the truth, where women are comforted, men are concerned. and so it's the perspective around what's even going on when the sermon is being preached. You're having two very different experiences, again, in general. And I think that has created a really intense and important divide. I'll call these things crucial gaps. Like that is a crucial gap between men and women and how they're experiencing church.
Yeah, there was I want to pause right here for a second here, and I want to make a distinction. Again, I don't go. I did grow up in church. I don't go, but there was a point here that I wanted to make, and somebody put up something about African spirituality, and the difference that I would make in that is that, coming out of slavery, obviously, is that the church was our foundation. The church was everything. It was our community center. It was our worship center. It was, where we learned. It was, schools, education. It served so many different functions, and as that we were gathered around that particular place, we get to know each other. We built communities. My parents knew your parents, and if I was acting stupid, you can be sure that your parents had the authority to talk to me in some type of way, and all that. And so, as the corruption, as Ms. Chandler just laid out comes in, men are repulsed, they leave the church, the community and sense of community, the cohesiveness is not there. And so now we're in a space. So I get that, I get the spirituality aspect. I'm not, talking about that, people have relationships with God or whatever. I'm speaking more of the community aspect to that. And that's what that we talk about the ratchetness and all this other stuff we got going on. Well, it's going on because our foundation, which was a community type of community organization, has been lost.
Totally. And then not to mention the leadership is involved in, and of course it's not every pastor, but we've seen enough to know that like church leadership is, you can't even count on the pastor to be doing the thing, the basic morally right thing to do. And so it's the modeling is just really, really, really poor. And men like strong, integrous models. And if he's not, already a man's in a position, because normally the pastor is a man, right? So already a man's in a position to where he is in church, there's a submission to the pastor, right? It's like there's leadership, he's the leader. And so if a man is already saying, I'm supposed to be led by this man spiritually, but I can't trust him, it's absolute no. You can't, how can you convince a man with integrity to do that? Like there's not even an option like for that. There's no space for that. And so if the church leadership can't be counted on to do the right thing and convict the congregation through the word, right? Like it's not about judgment. It's about just saying like, hey, how are we supposed to be living? If they refuse to do that because we want to protect their audience instead of actually holding people accountable. I mean, why would a man sit in there? No, why would a woman sit in? Nobody should sit under that. Nobody should sit under that. But point being, men are much more likely to take action around that. And their action is to leave. So women, I think women have to demand more from church leadership.
Well, I think it's their demands more for leadership. That's probably part of the problem. Tell me more about how bad the men are. Tell me more about how special I am. Tell me more about how I'm doing okay. Tell me more about.
Right demands. Yeah, gotta be the right demand.
Yeah. Wealthy Firefighter says, I will say, as church aside, men don't value community as much as women. That's something we need to work on. Do you think that that's an accurate statement?
Yeah, I see that. I see the tide starting to change, seeing a lot more conversations about men's group than we ever have before. Our good brother Jeff St. James just started a men's group on Monday night. So there's more recognition around men needing community. Now there's real research out there about the loneliness epidemic in men in particular and the impact that's having on men. So there's actually more spotlight coming on the significance of community for men. But it is true, it hasn't been something that's been emphasized up until, very, very, very recently. This is very, very new. So, and men are often encouraged to do things on their own, right? And to be independent and to see and it's a natural imperative that they have, and then it's socialized as well. And so now we're starting to open up the opportunity, because we're opening a perspective, which allows for the opportunity for men to get more involved in community. And I'm seeing more men get actually pretty engaged in that and interested.
I take a different approach to that. I think that men's spaces have been invaded by ladies. I think that's been a huge part of the problem. I grew up in a boys' club. Now it's a boys and girls club. There were lawsuits about cigar bars and things like that to force ladies to enter into them. I think that I guess it depends on what we're talking about community, but I think that men have always wanted to get together. We back in the primal days, right? We had we went out and hunted together and all this, right? It was probably just seen as a different way, and now we want men to get together and kind of act like women. Okay, we're going to talk
Right.
about our feelings, versus we just go out there and just go to the golf course and just, if we tease each other, we tease each other, or we go on a fishing trip or whatever. So I think it's just been a difference of that, and
Oh,
I get
sure.
the I get the male loneliness. I hear it. I'm not exactly sure it's true, but I do think that there's something to being in close proximity to one another. I do think that's a point. But a
Mhm.
lot of guys are have online groups, or they talk every day on when they're playing video games. So that is one form of it. But yes, there is something to be said to being in these different in close proximity. I have to check out what Jeff is doing, but I know some other brothers are talking about that because they feel as if they can't have conversations and nobody knows what they're going through. And I think we're solving one problem, male loneliness, in essence, about being in close proximity. But what are they talking about? And they're talking about joblessness and homelessness and not being able to talk to their friends or talk to their wife about their issues. You know, we got to solve those issues, right? If we're having a right, we talk about farmers and what they're going through right now. Well, maybe if we've solved the bigger issue of the farming problem, I'm making a broad generalization here, but we got to solve some of those bigger problems to solve some of the problems that men are having, right? If a
Mhm.
lot of guys, if these guys are, pew pewing, schools, we got to
Mhm.
solve that problem,
Mhm.
versus, what I'm saying? Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
Yeah, and I also want to recognize that you're right. Men, because going back to what you were saying earlier about about men's groups being invaded. So before like more like modern therapy, let's say modern therapy or like modern group therapy and stuff. Like there definitely have been men's groups that just don't look like what like a therapeutic men's group looks like now, right? Like sitting in a circle, like an
Yeah, yeah,
AAB,
yeah.
talk about your
Right,
feelings. So
right.
so I definitely want to acknowledge that. And I do think it is important to acknowledge the invasion of women in men's spaces, even online, like on, you'll hear men talking to men and they're sharing men's opinions with each other, sharing men's thoughts with each other. And then women are in the comments saying that's not true. And that's just the virtual version of the invasion. So I definitely
Mhm.
want to acknowledge that. I think that's important. Um,
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
and then we were saying that there's layers to the issue, right? Like so if men are lonely, so are you saying like one, are men really lonely, and
Mhm,
then like in what context are they lonely? Like
mhm,
is it a loneliness in their romantic relationships, right?
mhm.
But I have community with the guys that I play video games with or in my group chat. So I do
Mhm.
think that that's also in different important distinctions to make.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's definitely, an important, distinction to make, so, um, personal growth
Mhm.
personal growth, you deal a lot with that, and, where does this play in at? We talk about church and community, but somebody's gotta do the internal work, right? They gotta read a book, they gotta listen to a podcast, they gotta listen to you, they gotta go to you, right? Speak about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it all starts with the individual. So it is very easy for us to be outward focused and say what is going on with everybody else. And I'd also say that we're not even, our brains, the internet's new, social media is new. We're really have never been taking in this much information at once. And so I think that it's created a distortion around how much weight is really ours to carry, like as an individual. And so we have a lot of people trying to solve a really big, massive group problem, like for a race, rather than focusing on like really what can you do in your own house, in your own life. And so it's really easy, of course, to look at other people and judge and be critical. Now, that's always been the case. That's just human. I think the internet makes it just a lot easier and visible and makes it louder and magnifies it. But we really have to focus that attention inward. And what we're experiencing in our outer life so often is a reflection of what's going on with ourselves and like the quality of myself. So, rather, the quality of myself is a reflection of what I'm going to see externally in my life. And so, really, really important for us to look at ourselves. I think most people would agree with that. I think that then the issue is people don't know how to do it, or they don't spend enough time doing it. And so if I don't know what does it mean to work on myself? What does it mean to do the work? What does it mean to focus on you? If I like, most people would agree with that at this point, that's a better idea and more valuable than focusing on everybody else and trying to solve the world's problems. But I think that a lot of people just really don't know how to do it. So I'm trying to get more solutions out there for people, and rather than just commenting on the issues, which we all know are out there, we have a lot of people talking about the problems. It is oversaturated talking about the problems in the Black community, in my opinion. But we have very, very, very few people talking about the solutions. And then we have very little support of the people talking about the solution, because the people talking about the solutions we're the most boring ones, to be quite frank, because it's normal, calm, plain conversations. It's what's the problem? What do we need to do to fix it? And it's not exciting. Like, we don't need to blow things up. We're trying to put things back together. And so the people like us don't get the same kind of support. And so we have to do a better job of supporting the people who are doing the work. And then people like me and you, and the people that we know, the few people that we know who are on that same level, we need to do a better job of organizing together, I think. So I don't even remember where the initial questions were, but
No, you're right. We got to do some internal work, and those who are trying to come up with solution. And this is the issue. And Jita has said this well. Men are perceived as being lonely because they've removed themselves from dysfunctional culture that does not align with their values. This is a disingenuous charge by those who say that. So, as you mentioned, people who do this are boring, they're quiet. This is one of the first things you said. They're boring, they're quiet, they want to move away, they don't want to be around that type of thing. And they're seen as outcasts. And so, how do we take the micro, again, the individuals, and have them be looked up to versus the Cardi B's or the fake pastors or everything else we've talked about, right? So and that is the struggle.
Yeah. And I think that we can't make people hungry for something that they don't want to eat. And so again, like I think we really there's a lot of people playing different games, and we're all in the same space, and we got to figure out who's playing what game. And the people that are serious cannot play the same games as the people who aren't. Meaning, like, the ways that the people who if the people who aren't serious they're garnering attention in a certain way, we can't do those same things, right? It's going to be out of line with our values. We're going to attract the wrong people. We have to do the things that are aligned with us and we're standing in our convictions about it. And we have to be okay with not being popular, and we have to stop getting discouraged by that. And I think we have to have more of a community within a community where we're able to stay supported and connected and motivated to move forward. But when we're all mixed up with the others, when we're mixed up with people who have the other types of values and the other types of goals, I think we can get discouraged, unmotivated, and confused about how we're supposed to go about making this change. I think we have to understand that we have to create the rules of this game ourselves. Like, we can't play by other people's rules. We can't try to get attention in the same way. We can't be competing for the people who are naturally drawn to those types, and we're trying to compete for their attention. We're going to lose out, right? Because those are people, they like dopamine and their attention spans are like goldfish. That's not us. And so if we're trying to play by their rules, we are going to lose, and then we feel discouraged and unmotivated. So I think we have to make we have to make distinctions between us, and we have to know who's who. I've been really, that's been on my mind these last couple of years, just to know who is who, connect with your people, and don't try to compete with people who are not even trying to play your game. We're not all going for the same goal here. We are not all going for the same goal. So being okay with separating from that group and not trying to imitate the way that, like for the leaders of like this group, we can't try to imitate what they're doing. And we have to be more connected ourselves. And we have to understand that, like, no, this is, someone said in the comments, like, solutions aren't sexy. No, but when the outcomes really are, but talking about them really isn't. And we have to be okay with the more boring conversations, because it takes time to parse this stuff out. It takes time for men and women to get on the same page, to communicate, to then now us communicating, to be able to then communicate it to the audience that's listening and try to help people understand what to do with the information. That takes time. We need time, right? We're not 60-second real people. We need time, and we need to be okay with like spending the time that's going to be necessary to get the traction that we want, and not get distracted and try to play other kind of attention games that are out there.
Yeah, I've often gotten some pushback. You know, how come you don't boil this down to a 60-second reel?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a goldfish. I want to articulate a point here. So I can appreciate that. So being a marriage and family therapist, tell us what's going on between men and women. What are you seeing? What is going on out here?
Where do I start? What am I seeing? Let's see. I'll talk about what I'm seeing truly in my practice, because those are real people. The internet, I do think there's a reflection of reality there, and there are distortions definitely on the internet. So I'll just talk truly about what's going on in my practice. A lot of divisiveness. Okay. Honestly, the part of the media, of social media, or this gender war that you see play out, that is playing out in real life, like in real time couple sessions, where I see a lot of women, a lot of defensive women, and a lot of disempowered men. And so men in relationships with women who have the right idea, but are with a very resistant partner. So a lot of defensiveness. I'm seeing a lot of, I'll say, honestly, the word that's on my tongue is like hopelessness. I seeing hopelessness with people, with couples in particular, because, well, and often when couples end up in couples therapy, there's been a stack up of issues. Thanks, DeLorean. I really appreciate that. I'll let Austin know. A stack up of issues with couples. And so there's a lot of resentment and such. So seeing a lot of resentment built up. And then I would say resentment, defensiveness, especially with women, and a sense of like hopelessness or powerlessness with men.
Mm-hmm. Well, the internet is saying a lot with that as well, right? They're saying that men are being defanged, emasculated, and so this is playing out in your practice, as you said.
Yeah, with couples, I would say with couples. With individuals, it's very different. With individuals, very different. So the women that I work with, of course, women are working with me, like they're definitely trying to be accountable for their behavior. You couldn't work with me otherwise. So the women I'm working with are truly, like, they are, I would say, the opposite of the kind of women that you hear about online. So they're actively looking and actively looking for the parts of themselves that need to change in order to get the kind of relationship they want. Like, they're the kind of woman that men are looking for, truly. Like, they're actually they're actually doing the work. Okay. Now, it's not that many of them. I have more men in my practice right now than I have women.
Wow.
Which I find really interesting. We can talk about that.
Yeah.
But men that are in my practice are the women that men want. Like, they are the men that are ultra responsible, that want to take accountability for where they can change, that are looking to be more emotionally intelligent, that want to have healthy relationships with women. So I really.
But they're lame.
Sorry. Oh yeah. but yeah, they're lame. according to society standards, right? So
right.
Yeah, and that's interesting. That's interesting. The women, the individuals in my practice are like I think like the ideal types of the kind of people that the people on the internet are saying that they want. And then the issue then is, well, how do you get these good people matched with other good people, because it seems to be so few of them.
Mm.
So it's interesting. The individuals are like they're like, I would say, thriving, like they're like really moving forward. But in relationships, people are being just dragged down. I mean, it's uncommon for me to work with a couple that is a couple that's there are different like tiers of couples that I work with. Some that are like the like sort of ideal couples where yes, you're supposed to be together. You're a good fit. You just have like there are these kinks that we need to work out, some misunderstandings and true genuine miscommunications. And then we have these lower tier couples. That's the minority. Then we have these lower tier couples, which is a much higher percentage, where they're experiencing things like what I call genuine impasses, where we're at a place where we're not dealing with they're dealing with fundamental issues between them, like fundamental issues about like the way this relationship should look, the way this relationship should work, basically, and they cannot come to agreement. And those in relationship, that's just an incredibly draining experience. So it's a very different, they're in a really low vibe, low energy state, because being in a relationship where you cannot connect, where it feels like you're truly not on the same team, like, I mean, you're dealing with those like impasses, those genuine impasses where we are stagnated because we cannot cooperate.
Okay, so I need you to break that down. How do they get to that place? And then I want to ask you about how men are feeling powerless in these relationships.
Yeah.
So break down how do you get to the place where you feel as if you can't cooperate and you're in this low place that you said? How does that happen? And what's the average length of a marriage or a relationship when that begins to kick in?
Yeah, it's resentment. Resentment is just the silent killer in relationship. And so resentment comes from frustration, unmet needs, and feeling misunderstood, unheard, unseen, that kind of thing. So these are issues, these are disconnections that endure for long periods of time. And the more time that goes by, the more resentment builds up and the harder it is to solve those issues. So that's kind of in a nutshell how people get to that state. There's unmet needs, enduring disconnection. Intervention hasn't happened early enough. The mountain has gotten so high that it feels insurmountable. And now at this point, we not only have whatever problem, whatever the original problem is, we also have interpersonal issues between us. Now I don't like you. And that's a problem. Like, we can solve a problem if we have two people. Those are like that top tier couple. We like each other, and we have an issue we need to solve. Those lower tier couples is like, we really don't like each other, and we have an issue we need to solve, and that's a really, really challenging place to be. So enduring disconnections, resentment builds up, and the mountain gets too high.
Let me give you my thoughts here, because I'm a guy who's been married twice. And so when you spoke to powerlessness, I think that I think that there's something to that we have to take a serious hard look at in modern marriage. Women, tell me if I'm wrong,
Mhm.
women want a powerful man, socially mobile, very educated, smart, able to lead a family. Generally, I'm speaking in general terms. Everyone's not gonna agree with that.
Mhm.
There's sometimes there's an emasculation process that happens unintentionally. There's another YouTuber who I think really kind of lays this out. I think her name of her channel is the Happy Wife School. Slow erosions. The husband is, hey, listen, the wife's got to do something. Hey, can you fold these clothes? Husband does it. He doesn't do a good enough job. So I know you can do it. So she refolds the clothes.
Mhm.
I told you to feed the kids. You didn't feed them. Or why would you give the kids why would you give him so much, or why'd you let him eat donuts or something like that. So little things like that start
Mhm.
to, now he's not going to do anything. Now he's going to sit on the couch. Now he's not going to participate. Now he's going to, and there's a slow erosion or almost an emasculation type of thing. And a
Mhm.
lot of times the guys will try to do more in order to get one of the big things that they got married for, sex. Right? So I'm going to be nicer to my woman because I want to have some adult fun later on. And so that becomes an issue where now she's not attracted to this guy who's doing everything I wanted to do. I'm also mad because he doesn't do everything to the level that I want him to do it. He didn't wash the dishes right, et cetera, et cetera. So does that aid to your argument about resentment, and now the guy is feeling powerless in his marriage? He
Mhm.
can't leave because the courts will knock him down. Does that make sense what I'm saying there?
Yeah, I think that that can be one way that powerlessness can, well, how something can end up becoming like someone can end up in a state of feeling powerless. When I'm thinking about this, when I'm thinking about powerless, I'm thinking about the the lack of influence the man feels that he has or thinks that he has on his home and
Mm,
in his relationship. And so like I can't, when he can't get the kind of experience he ultimately wants, he doesn't know how to, or does know how, and she is unresponsive to him trying to facilitate a relationship in a way that he sees fit, or a way that he sees like it would be healthy for both of them, right? Now, not like in like a self-serving way, but in a way where he would say like is actually mutually beneficial for both of us. But if he doesn't have influence over the woman that he's with, that's a very powerless feeling. No matter how much he communicates or how much he changes the tone or how much he bought the flowers and it's still not working, like, and he can't influence her to participate in the relationship in a way that would be conducive to both of their, like, to mutual satisfaction. He doesn't have enough influence in the house. And so yeah, that really leads to a feeling of disempowerment, and not even a feeling of, but like a reality of you are actually like being emasculated or disempowered in your house.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I 100% agree with that. Wealthy firefighter says it boils down to finances for most women. You have to make about 20-30% more to get the decent amount of respect. Does that
Yeah,
aid to
I
your
was just
argument
having
there?
a conversation. I have this conversation often. So the men I work with individually and the women I work with individually have different issues. We have some very gendered issues, and that's one of them with women that I work with, especially whether they make money or not. Um, the way I put it is, this woman cannot restrain herself. Like it's like if he does not make a certain amount of money, it's like she allows herself to disrespect him in a way that if he did have that money, she would not. Simply put. And that's a really big problem. So wealthy firefighter is that's it. It's a unfortunate reality that I have to
Is,
talk to women about quite often. And it's in
is this
some.
is this is this a new phenomenon, internet thing? Because they see how other people are living, what they're saying. What's this lady? I can't remember her name there. The Shira, whatever, 7 or 8 or 9, whatever. This all this kind of nonsense, right?
Yeah, I think that that's got to be a part of it, because when I look back a generation, when I look, or rather 2 generations, 3 generations, like it wasn't the same issue, right? So the man making a certain amount of money and getting a certain amount of respect is a newer problem. It's a newer problem. This is a more modern issue. So, in other words, men, like the financial requirement, the respect requirement was not related to finances prior. And so I do think that there is definitely a big media influence. And then even someone, I think someone said something, what a man said, did she learn that behavior from her mom? Yeah, I was just talking to a client, and yes, like that is actually the case. So it's not just media. You always got to look in the house as well. Not to say there's always something in the house like that. Always, but I mean, there's often something that's going on in the house that helps this woman to adopt that kind of behavior. So I do think it's a media thing. And I do also think you definitely have to look in the house and see what the dynamic was between her mother and father.
So the guest that I had the other night, and other people have said this as well, that we live in a matriarchy. I grew up in the Northeast, and I grew up in a church, and it was a heavily male-dominated space. Deacons, the pastor of the church ran the church, and
Mhm.
it was good. He was a good man. He was a good man in good environment, and the churches that we were organized with were all very heavily male-dominated. Women couldn't preach, all that kind of stuff. So I don't really understand. Even though I grew up, my mother was not married, and I grew up. It was just she was a single mom, but I had strong uncles that I looked up to. I've often talked about that. Um, so this idea of living in a matriarchy, we talk about learning things from your mom and how these people are talking crazy. I just can't identify with that. I just
Mhm.
can't identify. And maybe it's a Northeast thing, or maybe it was just where I grew up in Connecticut thing. I don't know. I'm not passing judgment on anybody else, but pandering a business is that's going to be solved. The money expectation. If there's no point in men, if not, is there a point in men trying? Right? If I'm
Yeah.
making 50 grand a year as a man, and my woman is making 60 grand a year, does she not entitled to give me respect because she's making more, or because I'm not making 20 to 30% more than her? And
Mhm.
what should they do about that?
Yeah, I mean, this is where we get into you got to know the woman that you got to know the woman that you're with.
Mm,
So if a woman attaches respect to how much money you're making, no, you cannot solve her problem. That's her problem. I think
mm,
it's a her thing. That's her problem. No, you can't solve that. You need to be with a different person. Now, someone can become aware of that kind of behavior. Like of course I work with people and help them to change, and so I've helped people to become aware of how problematic that behavior is, how wrong that is, um, and how degrading that really is. And people can change their minds, right? And I think we all have changed our minds about men and women. Like we, as a woman, I've changed my mind about men and men. You have changed your mind about women. We've had genuine changes, real changes that we've had. So people can change. Now, should you be in a relationship with someone who needs to change something like that? Now that's you got to answer that question. What kind of capacity do you have? What I would advise you to do might be different than what you want to do. That's a nuanced question. But so can it be solved? It can be solved, but on an individual level, like she needs to solve that problem. And then you have to decide, to what extent do you want to be with this woman as she tries to work through that issue, if she even sees it as an issue at all. If she doesn't see it as an issue at all, like if you know that when you get paid, you get treated better, and when you don't get paid, you get treated worse, and she cannot acknowledge that there's a difference. If someone doesn't know that there's a problem, they can't solve it. So
mm.
it can be solved as long as the person can acknowledge it and then be intentional about changing it. And if you want to be with that person in their process, that's something that you would have to make that decision for yourself and determine if it's worth it.
I got you. I got you. I just, again, I'm looking at the macro, and if we can't
Mhm.
get together, or if there's arguing and bickering in the house, or then we get the single mom epidemic. We got men who don't want to be there, and all this other stuff that hurts us all collectively. So these micro problems become macro problems.
They do.
Um,
This is where it kind of like when we see this big macro issue, right? This issue with money at the crux between men and women. I think that it's really discouraging. And I think that it definitely paints the picture that it can't change, won't change, or that all women or most women think this way. And it can discourage men from trying, I think. And I would when you tell me, I think it can discourage men from being curious about being about what the woman in front of him, like what her values really are, what her how to discern her mindset around these issues. I think that it can discourage people from being curious about that. And maybe you don't even know how to be curious about that. How do you discern, a woman's mindset around these issues? How can you tell what her priorities and values are? So sometimes the things that we're seeing playing out on the stage, and these that look like these these macro issues enveloping the culture right now. Yes, it's telling us something. It's definitely reflective of a problem for sure. And again, I see it in my own practice. It's real. And there are some things going on the ground. There are individual differences between people, of course. And so I think it's important that we also make space to be able to understand, what does the person in front of us really believe and really think. And when we think about what we were saying earlier about men who push back about me saying something because I'm a woman, like period, right? Like they have because of the macro determined something in the micro that is not true. And so I think it's important that we take some time. That's why it takes time. We have to take time to parse out what's really going on. How do you really think? What are your values? And can I discern where you stand, rather than deflecting to all men or all women must think like this because that's what I see playing out. Don't dismiss the thing in the macro, but consider also what's going on right in front of you.
Yeah, no, that's important. Um, so you and I, before we jumped on here, we were talking about marriage,
Mm-hmm.
the difference between, and you asked me a good question about this idea of new marriage, right? This marriage 2.0 or whatever of people entering into spiritual unions and into commitment ceremonies and things along those lines. And I told you, if I were to do it again, that's what I would do. I was married twice. I escaped financial ruin 2 times, and I'm not going to tempt fate a third time. But I
Mm-hmm.
certainly do want one person. I wouldn't mind calling my wife, uh, or wearing a ring and taking other financial legal steps, making sure that we have insurance policy, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so are you running into your practice, or what are your thoughts about that?
Most people that I'm working with, it would be most people, it would be their first marriage. Like they have not been married yet. And
Mm.
so they're open to being legally married. I'm not running into, like with couples or something, like a division around one wanting to get legally married and one wanting to maintain just like but not get legally married and have a different kind of union, spiritual union, commitment, a long-term commitment, a life, whatever you would want to call it. So I'm actually not running into that. It's more of like a theoretical question that people kind of play with rather than something that's actually playing out in people's real lives when it comes to the people that I work with. I have my own like thoughts about it, but it's not really playing out in my practice, not yet.
What are your thoughts about it?
I think that one, no one should be pressured to get married. No one should be pressured. If you have to make somebody marry you, no, I don't think if someone does not want to get married, they should not get married. That's my bottom line. If someone does not want to get married, they should not get married. Now, well, of course, normally we would be talking about the man not wanting to get married, right? Legally married, typically. And in that case, the woman needs to take that very seriously and be very, very clear in what this relationship is. So if someone doesn't want to get married, I do not think that they should get married. I think that I really do think that whatever works for someone, I think that that's what they should do. Like if I got from where I stand right now, if I got divorced, I would not go through this again. I really can't imagine. I cannot imagine. And I love Austin. I cannot imagine going through this whole thing again. I can understand why people don't do it. And I love my relationship. I can understand why people don't do it. I can understand why people want to do. So I think that doing commitment ceremonies, unions, whatever you want to call it, I think it's totally valid. And I also think that if someone is set on getting legally married, like they're like, I gotta get married. You have to marry me. Uh, I think that that's kind of it's something I wonder about. My question is just why. My
Mm.
question really is why. So, because some people want to get legally married, and women, we have to be honest about this. Some women want to get legally married because you want to be able to get money if you get divorced. Like that's just the like reality. And women, I'm just gonna talk to women real quick. Women, if we gotta start acknowledging that that is just real. Okay, that exists. Some women, you just want to get married because that's the case. Not every woman trying to get legally married is doing it because they want to live out the union that the God of the universe has like laid out for us. Like that's, a lot of people don't even understand like the spiritual nature of marriage anyway. So if someone is really really set on getting legally married and will not consider anything else that is essentially the exact same thing. Like if you laid out the terms, it would be the same thing. You just didn't go to the court to get it signed. That to me, I have questions about that. I really do wonder about that. When we were talking earlier, I think that if you are planning to have children, then that is an important factor to consider. Like I think that does make a difference. But in general, I think that the other unions outside of legal marriage can be right just as valid as a legal marriage, even more so. Like I really don't think that there's not an inherent value difference between the legal marriage and a committed union. The people in those commitments, in those unions are what gives the thing value. The way that you treat the union that you're in, that's what gives it the value. The state obviously does not give it the value, because look at our divorce rates. The state didn't do anything for your marriage. So it's really the people that are in it, and both people need to be comfortable with the commitment that they're making.
I totally agree with you. And there's a couple of comments I want to put in here. Into the wealthy firefighter in today's society, I think the only real reason to get married is for children and business, social mobility. But I would strike out. Business you can enter a contract with, I guess. Maybe start up a bakery or something like that. And okay, we'll just be what's the difference between doing that and starting a bakery with your best friend? I don't know what that.
Well, I think wealthy firefighter might be talking about the fact that in business, people who are married are more valid. Like they have a validation, a social validation, than people that aren't married. Or literally, you could just have a ring and you're kind of you getting that validation.
I was going to get to that, yeah, and that would be the second thing, the social mobility. You just put a ring on, just call my wife or husband. They don't know. People aren't okay. Well, let me see your license. We don't walk around with those like driver's license, right? So, I just don't see that. And somebody put in here something about spiritual marriage here, and I don't want to sound. I know we spend a lot of time talking about church and all that, but I don't want to sound cynical. But a lot of these marriages that are performed in churches that still have the legal contract still get divorced. So, so having somebody officiate over it and God blessing it, and people still go down that road. So, I agree with you that it's really the internal validation that gives it meaning. And if I'm committing to you, if I'm committing to you with a commitment ceremony, spiritual union, call it what you want. I guess the spiritual. Again, if you're looking for biblical principles, the spiritual union. I ran this by a couple of different people, friends of mine who are religious, and one who is very religious said, when I brought up the spiritual union thing, he had to think about it. It's like, okay, if I'm committing myself before God, we do it in a church. Why do I need to go down to the courthouse, to City Hall, and sign this paper saying this? And to the idea of a prenup. The idea of a prenup, to me, it's kind of silly because I have a contract negating the first contract. Yeah, I have a contract that's going to negate the first. Why not just eliminate the whole thing? I mean, I just don't want this. I just don't want the state involved. I just don't think that they should be involved. They shouldn't. They're not involved in us meeting. They're not involved in us falling in love. They didn't buy any dinners for us. They didn't do it. Why are you involved at the back end of us? You know, if we break up, and hopefully that doesn't happen, or whatever. So that's just. Uh, so again, my faith dictates that sex must be between the confines of marriage. I get that, but what would be different about that in the spiritual union if you did it before God and we confess our love before the whatever that would be, council? I mean, I don't know why that's different. I just don't know why that's different. I haven't heard an argument. I'm trying to run it by people because again, and I agree with you that people they just got to be married. Okay, what is it about that? And I appreciate you saying that it's really just a financial benefit at the end. If things go wrong, I know I'm going to be taken care of. And
Well,
I
don't think that that's all it is. I do think that for some people that's what it is. They want that. They want the security of the state. I don't think that's. I can't even say that that's the majority, but I can say that that's a sliver of the. That's at least a piece of the pie.
Sure. I get that. The person with the spiritual union has no right to the medical or other, but you can again, you can write something up about that. And in a hospital, again, they're not asking if you walk into the hospital and say my husband is here and he just went in a bad car accident and I'm his wife. They're not going to check. They're not going to check for your marriage license. They're just okay, his wife. And you can also still write up something saying in the case of an emergency, here's my wife, her name, date of birth, whatever. We had a commitment ceremony, this, that, and the other. Have it notarized and just bring it into a hospital or to whoever and say that I have this authority. I just don't see the need. I could be wrong though. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely. It would be interesting to hear what an attorney would say, because I don't know.
I did call one and she didn't want to talk about it. She didn't want to talk about it because to me, and I she didn't say this, but she's like, oh, you know, we don't really deal with that, you know, just. And she didn't want to talk about it, and because I wanted her to come on the show and like explain it. Listen, I have it, and yeah, I just think that they're in it for the money. I think the attorneys listen. You know, there's no money here, so why am I going to do this, right? Why am I going to talk you out of or talk other people out of something that's going to make me money in 5-10 years? That's just the way I viewed it. I could be wrong about that, but I know she didn't want to talk about it. So. But if there's any attorneys out there listening, family law attorneys, tell us what the difference are and why we should do it, and what would be the difference between spiritual union or commitment ceremony or whatever. So I don't know. Yeah. So, but we both agree that in the case of children, that there should be some legal financial obligations. Yeah. I definitely agree. I definitely think that if you're younger, you know, 35 and under, you want to have kids, you want to get married, all those legal protections, I definitely think you should get married. But if you're in a situation like myself, I have kids, I wouldn't want my kids to get my assets, when my home, everything else I got in the bank, which ain't a lot. Y'all buy me some lunch there. If something happened, I would want my kids to get it. And if I'm dealing with someone, presumably she would have children. And well, the young lady I'm seeing right now, she has a child. She has assets. I would think that she would want to give her assets to her child. You know, so what do we need the state involved for? I'm just not seeing it. I'm just not seeing it.
I think in the conversation like you're bringing up today, the context matters. Like marriage at every stage of life isn't the same thing. Marriage with and without kids isn't the same thing. So context does. I think it's relevant.
Yeah. So what's next for you? Somebody gave you congratulations. What are they congratulating you about? What's next for you?
They're congratulating me on my engagement.
Oh, I thought you were already married. Yeah. Oh, okay. oh man, I saw you all booed up in pictures. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, she got it. And saw the rock on your face. I'm like, oh, she got her man. I thought, okay, well, okay. Um, did you guys set a date yet or anything, or what?
No, don't have a date yet. Don't have a date yet. Yeah, we have counseling things to go through and a process.
Okay. Well, I think that that's important. I think that that's important because a lot of people just kind of jump into it and don't know
Yeah,
what's going on. So,
yeah.
tell us about how to do it. How long did you guys date? Well, first tell us where you met at.
Mhm.
Who put the moves on who? How long did y'all date? And give us the deets there.
Okay, thank y'all and the congrats in the chat. I appreciate that. Are we invited? You know, I need to have kind of like social media wedding for people who have just been like around for a while and want to be a part of everything. I think that'd be really fun. I'm gonna need security though. I'm gonna have a lot of security. So, but we actually met when I was a junior in college. I was at Virginia Tech. He's a few years older than me, so he was out of school. Um, he went to University of Maryland. We met on Tinder actually in college. So yeah, it was before it was Tinder when Tinder was good, y'all, at the beginning. Okay, it's something different now, so I hear, but it was at the beginning. That's how we first met. And then we didn't. We went on some dates, and then we just like stopped talking completely for like years. We were very loosely connected on social media, um, just because we would like follow each other. And then one day, so I was in the habit of like clearing out my I need a Tinder account. I'm not a Tinder, don't do Tinder. But I got in the process of like clearing out my followers a lot. Like I audit my social media a lot. So I like to keep my feed very like pretty clean. So uh I had seen him and I was like, why are me and Austin still even connected? And I actually had just like unfollowed, I literally unfollowed him. And then that same week, like the next day, he messaged me and he was like, I'm gonna be in Atlanta. Do you want to go to dinner? And I had always said, if Austin asked me to go to dinner, I would go to dinner. He was like the one person in my brain. And I was like, if he asked me to go to dinner with him, I would go. So I had just seen him. He had messaged me like the next day, and I was like, okay. And then so we met up, and honestly, like after that dinner, like that was pretty much it. Like that was it. That was in November 2023. And so yeah, we that was our second first date. And then we got engaged June 7th of this year.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
So you're going to do the marriage, not a legal ceremony or not a commitment ceremony or spiritual. You're going to do a marriage.
Right. Yeah, we're in the context where marriage makes sense. Like where no kids, want kids. Like we want kids. We do not have kids. Young enough to where it makes sense. So that's pretty much that. It makes sense for us. And also if we were in different circumstances, we would just have a ceremony. But this is we're going for the whole legal marriage.
Very good. Very good. I wanted to address one more thing because Garrett asked the question at the top when we started about divorces plummeting. They're down 25%. Is that a plummet? I don't know. In places like Kentucky, and I think there's another state that's doing it. So your idea about that, because of 50-50 divorce, because 50-50 custody, when somebody gets divorced, the presumption is that there's 50-50 custody. So because of that rule, marriages have gone down. Ladies are saying they're staying because, or the critics of that bill or law are saying that it puts ladies in a desperate situation because now they feel as if they can't leave because they don't trust the guy with the kids and all kind of foolishness. Been a couple of videos about that. Have you heard about anything like that?
I actually haven't. That's interesting to me. I haven't heard that.
Yeah. It's something that's making its rounds in the quote unquote manosphere. So something to think about. I thought about doing a show about it, but I don't know. I don't know. But anyway, that's what's going on there. Again, and that's, to me, that's the way it should be. You have a child, you put 50% of you is in that child. Why was it always that the woman would through the court system? Again, here's the court system relegating the man to being a weekend dad or every other weekend dad. I mean, that's just
Yeah.
crazy and unfair. So the
Yeah.
presumption now is that that's the starting point. And of course, if there is abuse or anything like that you can prove, then of course the courts will take the necessary steps to protect the child. So
That's good. I mean, that just sounds reasonable. That just
Yeah.
sounds right.
Yeah. When you say it out loud, right? It sounds right. It sounds correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's
Yeah.
been a lot of course, like, courts are late on things, just like research is late on things. And there was a lot of belief that the mother was the root of all things for the children. I mean, that was a big part of psychology for a long time, where it was like everything about the development of the child was related to the care of the mother. And there was nothing on the father until this is like modern psychology, where it's like, oh, the children has two parents that matter, which is just wild. So I think that the court was reflective of that, and just the belief that a child's development is in best care with the mother, and that she is the majority, she has the majority share of the responsibility of the child's development, which is just not true.
Yeah. I can remember I read some legal some judgments, from the 1910s or 1920s or something like that. And one judge said, yeah, the love of a mother is like the warmth of the sun. I'm like, what kind of legal, I couldn't believe what I was reading. So yeah, that's the way they thought, so.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I had you on here for long enough. Thank you so much. You were definitely great to talk to. I'd like to have you on again. Appreciate it. I'm sorry there wasn't the fireworks that we had last show, but hey, we got to get to it.
Come down. Everybody, we just needed to come down and just come back together. Everything's okay.
Yeah. Listen, I made a lot of jokes, but I did reach out to that young lady. I'd like to have her back on. I'm not a mean, antagonistic person. I reached out to her via email and through text. So it just was what it was, but I'm not mad or angry or anything like that. So if you would just give us how we can reach you and your social media and all that.
Yeah, well, thanks to you for allowing me to be on the platform, and for your audience. I just really appreciate being welcomed into the space. I've enjoyed this conversation. I'd love to come back. Y'all can find me on Instagram, on YouTube, and on TikTok. I don't like TikTok. It's just like a backup page pretty much, but I'm on everything. It's at I Am Taylor Chandler. My website is the same, iamtaylorchandler.com. And if you want to email me, it's taylor@iamtaylorchandler.com. So it's super easy to find me. I'm definitely trying to grow my YouTube, y'all. So if you head over there and hit that subscribe button, I'd really appreciate it. I want to do lives like Dr. L. So yeah, this has been really great. I really appreciate the time and being here.
Thank you so much. I want to shout out to my man, AB Media. He's doing good work. He's got a podcast as well, AB Media. Maybe I'll have you on here one day, brother. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you guys. Take care of yourselves. Much love and peace.
Bye.